Have you ever held a handful of sand and wondered what secrets it holds? We often think of great scientific truths as things discovered in gleaming laboratories or through the lenses of giant telescopes pointed at distant galaxies. But sometimes, the most profound revolutions begin with something small, something overlooked. Imagine a monk carefully tending his garden, noticing something peculiar about his pea plants. He saw patterns, rules, a hidden language in the way they passed traits from one generation to the next. This was Gregor Mendel, a man who held the keys to genetics in his hands. But for decades, his discovery, his universe in a patch of peas, sat silently on a dusty shelf, completely ignored by the scientific community of his time. Let's journey into a world that exists all around us and even inside us, yet remained completely invisible for most of human history. I'm talking about the world of microbes. Today, we know that bacteria, viruses, and other microorganisms are fundamental to life on Earth. But for centuries, the idea that invisible life forms could cause disease or shape ecosystems was not just unknown, it was unthinkable. When Antony van Leeuwenhoek first peered through his handcrafted microscopes in the 17th century, he saw a teeming world of animalcules in a single drop of pond water. He was astonished. He sent letters to the Royal Society of London, describing these tiny living creatures with breathless wonder. Imagine a star so dense that a single teaspoon of its material would weigh as much as a mountain. A star so strange that it bends the fabric of space-time around it. This is a neutron star, the crushed remnant of a massive star's explosive death. But the idea of them was first proposed in 1934 by astronomers Walter Baade and Fritz Zwicky. It was a stunningly brilliant and prescient piece of theoretical work, and for over 30 years, almost no one paid any attention to it. It wasn't until 1967 that the story changed. A young graduate student named Jocelyn Bell Burnell was analyzing data from a new radio telescope. She noticed a strange repeating signal, a pulse that beat with unbelievable regularity, about once every 1.33 seconds. Think of your body's genetic code, your DNA, as a vast and beautiful musical score. For a long time, scientists were focused on reading the notes, the genes that code for proteins, the building blocks of life. The rest of the DNA, the vast stretches of non-coding sequences, was dismissed as junk DNA. It was seen as evolutionary leftovers, meaningless filler between the important parts. We began to see that this so-called junk DNA wasn't junk at all. It was the conductor of the orchestra. These regions contain switches, enhancers, and regulatory networks that tell the genes when to turn on and off, how loudly to play, and in which cells. This regulatory code is what makes a brain cell different from a skin cell, even though both have the exact same set of genes. Let's travel back in time to the late 1950s. A scientist named Charles David Keeling began a project that seemed at the time rather mundane. He decided to start making extremely precise, continuous measurements of the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from an observatory on Mauna Loa, Hawaii. Many in the scientific establishment thought this was a bit of a pointless exercise. The amount of CO2 was thought to be relatively stable, a background feature of our planet's chemistry. What he found was not stability. What he found was a planet in the process of a profound transformation. His data showed a clear, unmistakable trend. He also saw a seasonal fluctuation, a gentle sawtooth pattern on his graph. This was the planet breathing. It was the first undeniable empirical evidence that human activity, specifically the burning of fossil fuels, was fundamentally changing the composition of our atmosphere. Our brain is, without a doubt, the most complex object we know of in the universe. In the mid-20th century, a dominant idea really took hold, that the brain was like a complex but fixed machine. This concept, which we now call neuroplasticity, was met with deep skepticism. The established view was honestly just too entrenched. The tide began to turn with the advent of new imaging technologies, like fMRI, that allowed us to watch the living brain in action. They could observe the brain of a London taxi driver, whose hippocampus, the region associated with spatial memory, grew larger as they memorized the city's labyrinthine streets. The brain was not a static machine. It was a dynamic, living landscape, constantly being reshaped by our actions and thoughts. What does it mean to be human? For a long time, one of the defining answers was the ability to make tools. The prevailing scientific narrative was that our own genus, Homo, was the first and only lineage of hominins to master this skill. Jane Goodall, through her patient and groundbreaking observations of chimpanzees in the wild, showed that they too made and used tools. She watched them strip leaves from twigs to fish for termites. This discovery blurred the clean line that had been drawn. But then, in 2015, archaeologists working in Kenya discovered a collection of stone tools that were shockingly old. They were dated to 3.3 million years ago, a full 700,000 years before the first known members of our genus Homo even appeared on the scene. In the mid-1960s, two young radio astronomers, Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson, were working with a large horn-shaped antenna at Bell Labs in New Jersey. They were trying to use it for satellite communication, but they were plagued by a persistent, faint, and honestly pretty annoying hiss. They tried everything to eliminate it. They recalibrated their instruments. They checked their wiring. They even famously climbed into the antenna and cleaned out what they called a white dielectric material, which, yes, was pigeon droppings. Dickey and his team had theorized that if the universe began with a hot, dense Big Bang, then the afterglow of that primordial fireball should still be detectable today. The annoying hiss that Penzias and Wilson had found was not pigeon droppings or faulty equipment. It was the cosmic microwave background radiation, the oldest light in the universe. They had accidentally stumbled upon the most powerful evidence for the Big Bang theory ever discovered. It was a discovery that would win them the Nobel Prize. From the hidden rules in a monk's garden to the ancient light echoing through the cosmos, we see a recurring pattern. The path of science is paved with overlooked truths and forgotten discoveries. These stories are not failures. They are actually fundamental to the process. They teach us that our current map of reality is always a draft, a work in progress, with vast territories still marked here, be dragons. Think about the mysteries we face today. What is dark matter, the invisible substance that makes up most of the mass in the universe? What is consciousness, the process by which matter becomes aware of itself? How did life first arise from non-living chemistry? We look up at the stars and we look down at the microbes, driven by an insatiable need to understand our place in the cosmos. They show us that there are always new worlds to discover, new symphonies to hear, and new chapters of the cosmic story to write. And by seeking out these hidden truths, by challenging what we think we know, we do more than just build a better world. We become more connected to the magnificent, unfolding reality of the universe.